Hello everyone across the world. This is again Pavel Krastev, Dr. Krastev, New Hyde Park, New York. We are doing case number 6 with the variable geometry osteotomes by Helmut, Zepf, GmbH. So in this case we're doing tooth number, we have two premolars we're going to be replacing, okay, so 4 and 5. I was originally considering to make one tooth the size of a premolar, so put a molar and a premolar. However, we have very limited interocclusal space as you go posteriorly. So as we go further back here, we have a lot of very little limited clearance. So I changed my mind and I'm going to be putting one premolar and one more premolar. Both pilot holes are done, pilot osteotomies are done, and we just want to show the initial one. I usually like to place my first implant properly and then I do my second one. Some people like to place both of them at the same time and do the osteotomies at the same time. My preference usually is to do one at a time. This way I line up the first one perfect and then I use that as a guidance to line up my second one. So we just wanted to show everyone the guide pin. Rather, this is a drill that I used, and now we're going to go ahead with the tip 0 of the VGO system. And as everyone can see, this is tip 0. Taper is 2 millimeters. So now we're going to start. The other thing I wanted to mention, when I did the osteotomies for the pilot holes, the bone density here seems very soft. In the posterior here, it seems very dense. So we may use this system for this site and maybe not for this site. We'll see in a moment. So let's start with the tip 0. Okay, and we're using pure rotation. And once again, the tips are threaded to the 8 millimeter mark, and then they are not threaded. So 8 millimeters is threaded, then we have the rest not threaded. Tips are once again marked at 8, 10, 13, and 16 millimeters. And as you guys see, I work to densify the bone, and then I let the bone expand a little bit. Okay, so I'm doing pure rotation. I am not malleting. I'm not producing any heat that usually occurs with drills. And we're going to now pass 10 millimeters. We're approaching 13. I'm doing pure. Can you take one shot of my fingers here rotating the instruments? So I am using this crossbar here. Helmut Zepf was very kind to produce this instrument kit with a crossbar, which is very convenient. 2 fingers, okay? So we just got to the 13 millimeter mark. And this is again tip number 0. And now we're going to back it out with pure rotation. I don't want you guys pulling the instruments out. Just rotate them right out. Now the threads, aside from driving the instruments to place, the threads are also essentially cutting into the bone, and they're pre-tapping the bone, if you will, for the next instrument to squash the bone. So now we're going to use tip number 1. Now tip number 1, if you notice, has a dot underneath the 1. What that means, folks, is that this is a delta 2 instrument, and this instrument, compared to the previous instrument, will only widen progressively the crestal portion, but it will do so in a progressive fashion starting from the deep bone. Now I insert the instrument and I start to rotate. Now this instrument will passively go in until it reaches the 8 millimeter mark. And at that point, I will actually feel the instrument becoming active. So right now, we're going in, I'm rotating it, I'm not forcing it. And right now, as the threads disappear, you start to feel the resistance. And now the instrument just became active. Can you come a little bit more and slightly from here if possible? Thank you. So we're approaching 10. Mrs. P, are you doing okay?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I will call you Mrs. P to protect your identity. We passed the 10 millimeter mark. I'm giving the instrument a chance to widen the bone. We want to take advantage of the elastic properties of the bone. So I rotate and then I wait a bit. I rotate and I wait a bit. And as you folks can see right here, once again, I want to repeat, we have some other markings here which I will go into in other lectures. But when the dot is below the 1 or the number of the instrument, that means a delta 2 instrument. The previous instrument was a delta 1 instrument, which only dilates the deep bone. And of course, we need to be cautious with the patient's lower lip here, as always, which I'm watching very carefully. So right now the instrument, for whatever reason, does not want to progress further, so I'm going to back it out. We'll take it right out, and I will recalibrate the working depth one more time. So no pulling. I actually applied a tiny bit of pulling force here. So let's go in with tip number 0 one more time. And let's take it to full depth. So the number 0 tip goes into full depth with no problem. So let's take it out again. There we go. In the event that the instrument does not want to progress, you don't want to force it, you can always back it out. If you need to hybridize the method you're doing, you can. You can always use the drills and the instruments of the VGO set. Because the second instrument here, which is tip 1, didn't want to take me all the way to the 13 mark, so I backed it out. And now it seems to be going beautifully. Okay? So in some cases, as you guys all know, we have to think a little bit outside the box and just think about what's going on and what do we want to accomplish. So now I'm applying some apical force, okay, light apical force. We went past the 13 millimeter and now we are exactly at the 13 millimeter mark. Focus here, please. I'm applying some apical pressure here because the bone up on top seems to be more dense. So let's rotate tip number 1, which is the second tip of the system, out. Pure rotation on the exit. Now I'm going to, yes, 1 second, sure.